All right. So where are we at right now? Now we have a form, and we can enter stuff in the form. We hit submit, and we're getting a 403 because right now we're not doing the CSRF verification, which is a security measure that Django has where it just needs this token. Luckily, Django just gives us a variable that we can use, and we can just put it anywhere in the form. I think it's just CSRF dot token. Hell yeah, you can. Thank you. Nice. Cool. Oh, you missed that. Cool. So this is going to put our CSRF, our token here. I am recording. Yes. Cool. Let's go back and see if we get a new error. We should get a new error that, or maybe we don't get an error. Maybe we just get nothing. Okay. Let me hard reset. And then here, let's inspect real quick just so we can see. Here's our form. And then here is that token. So this, you've seen this before, I think, in forms, right, in Django. So this evaluates to an input field right here. And you can see it's hidden. So we don't actually see the input field. I wonder if I just put text here, what'll happen. Yeah, it'll like show up up here. But we don't want that. We just want it hidden. And then it has a name, and then here's the token right here. Cool. And we don't need to understand the mechanics of this. We just need to know Django is keeping track of this token to make sure that it's getting info from the right place, basically. So now, if we type in Rolling Stone and we hit submit, I think we're going to get an error because it'll go to our list action, and then it's just not returning anything. I think that's the problem. Like this. Yeah, I just have pass there right now. So yeah, it says it needs an HTTP response to return. So let's go back to views. And let's actually put an embed here. Cool. Let's go back here. So now, let's go back here, let's do a hard refresh. This, and we should get paused right here. So what happened? It made the post request. It hit this list concerts URL right here. And it's running this function that we wrote in our views, which is list concerts, and it's just pausing. Oh, and I screwed it up, so let's do it one more time so we can actually. Rolling Stones in there, and hit submit. Cool, so now we're inside this function, and we have this request variable that was passed in. So that's where I'm gonna get my data. So if I do request, that's just gonna be this request object right here, and it's a post. And I can get at the data by doing request.post. And you can see I get this query dictionary object. There's our token right there. And then here is artist, Rolling Stone, which is what we want, right? And the reason it's key is artist is because in the form, we put the name as artist. Cool? So whatever we called it here is what our key is going to be down here. So let's go back to views. And so I can say artist equals request.post artist. Let's try this one more time. Back over here. And submit. And now if I come back over here, so now I have this new variable on line 8. And if I do artist, it gives me Rolling Stones, which is what I want. Cool. So now I have my data. So now I want to go back to, how did that file go? This API test file that I have here. And I basically need all of this stuff, right? So let's grab this. We don't need the embed. Let's grab all this. We'll sort through it in a second. And let's bring it into my views. Let's get artist out of here. Let's take our API key for now and put it up at our top level. Just because that's my API key. So I have artist, I have my URL, and what is this? Okay, so this is going to be my response, and then I need to import the requests library. Questions so far? We just moved all that logic over here, right? Go ahead. Yeah, that makes no sense. I agree. I'm going to switch those. Thank you. Fine. Good call. Very good call. So we actually need, and that's probably why it's yelling at us right there. So we need to make the request, right? So we're getting the artist. We're inserting it into the URL that we already had. I'm going to actually change this because it's a little bit more common to just do API key. Cool. So the API key I have saved up here, the artist I have saved here. I make the exact same URL as before. I make the request, I get the response. And then what we want to do is, this is going to give us one location, right? But I actually want to go through all of the venues, all of the events, and get the locations for all of them. So I'm going to use a loop to do that. So I'm going to say for event in, what did I do here? I said response.json.embed events. So remember, at this point, when we're digging down, once we get to events, we have an array. So that means we can loop through it, right? We're going to call each thing an event, and then I'm going to say event.embed.venues, blah, 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 blah. And what do I want to do with that? For now, I'm just going to make an array of the locations. So we'll say locations equals, we'll just make it an array like that, and then we'll say locations.append this thing. And let's go back to embed so we can see what we did. Oh my God. Cool. Okay, type with an accent. Okay. So when we get back here, we're going to pull the artist out of the form data. We're going to insert it into the URL so we can make the GET request. We're going to actually make the GET request. Then we're going to parse, then we're going to loop through the response of the events, and we're just going to pull out the location from each one and append it to this array. And then I'm going to do embed so we can see the result of that. So let's go back over here. Rolling Stones, submit. We stopped here. So now I have my new variable locations that I'm declaring on 14, and then I'm looping on 15 and 16. And so now once I get to the embed on 18, locations, hopefully, cool, is an array of these locations. Cool. And I'm only getting, why am I only getting 2? Size 2. Yeah, because I have size 2. So let's change that to size 5. Yeah. Cool. Let's try it one more time just to make sure. We should have 5 objects. And we have 5 longitude and latitude. Cool. So the next thing here is we want to render a list. So we're going to do request, comma, we're going to say ticket master API slash event list.html. Come over here and we'll actually create that file. And for now, I just want to make sure that I'm returning the right thing. We won't even put any data in it yet. Let's call it list. Cool. Let's test that. like to test everything like one at a time. We don't need to pass data if there is no data. We're not going to do that. We'll do that in a second. Here? No, because we're not doing it here. On line 8, we're just returning the form. And the problem here was I didn't do return. That's why it exploded. So let's try that one more time. This is why I like to check this stuff as we go. And we get to list. Cool, but we haven't passed it any data yet. So then the next thing we would want to do, and we'll just do this, we'll say, just pass it an object, and we'll say, or whatever, locations, a dictionary equals locations. And then, where do I want to go? Event list. It's, wait, it's percent sign if I want to do a loop, right? So for location in locations. I'm not sure if this will convert these to string or not, so let's see. What did I miss? Thank you. Yeah, it's just going to be the word location, right? Like that. What's up? No, I just think it's easier to read. Are you talking about this space right here?
No, right above it. I don't know if you need that space.
Location before, like,
Here?
Right there.
Oh, I don't need one, but yes, let's put one because it's easier to read. We'll put these down here too. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I didn't know.
I don't think you need it, but it is easier to read, so I'm just going to do it. Cool. So now, cool. And there's all our longitude and latitude. Cool. So the next step here is, now that I have this data in my view, is to tell Google Maps to basically make a map with markers at all of these locations. Cool. You want to talk about secrets, right? So there are a couple of different ways. I don't remember this off the top of my head, so hopefully I can do this. So yeah, when we're dealing with our API keys, we generally do not want to have them exposed like this, because if I push this project up to GitHub, then everyone will be able to see my API key, right? And then they will be able to abuse my API key. If I'm paying for this service, then I'm especially screwed. I'll tell you a couple horror stories just to put it in your brain. I worked on a project with a friend a couple years ago, and we were using Amazon. This is the worst. Amazon Web Services, right? We'll have an API key. And he had a key, and he pushed it up to GitHub, and the next morning, he had a $5,000 bill from AWS, and he had to call, and it was like, there are bots just constantly trolling GitHub for API keys. Constantly, right? So, I mean, it can happen in a matter of seconds. They're just looking for someone to make that mistake. And then, thankfully, he was able to talk his way out of the charges, but that might not always be the case, right? So you just have to be really careful about that. So what do I do? Well, most places, I think, will they'll have a private GitHub repo. So that's one way you can do it. And GitHub, I think, now allows you 3 or 5 private repos. So you can take advantage of that, and then you should be good, right? The other way is to remove these and put them in their own folder, and then add that folder to your git ignore. So we can go over that really quick. Would that be helpful? That seems like what you want to go over, Christina. All right, so let's do that. No, I think it's a good question, and no one ever went over it with me, so it was annoying. So I'm gonna try to be better than the fools who taught me. I don't know why I lost my. Cool. So we're just going to do a quick and dirty way. So let's see. Where's that? Touch.get ignore. Cool. So now I have this get ignore file. And actually, let's do. This is my Python cheat sheet where I have a get ignore here. Let's copy that. Cool. And I'm going to add a file called .secrets. Cool. And I'm going to make that file too. Okay. So I made this get ignore file. How familiar are we with the get ignore file? You've probably seen them in repos. You might not have made your own. All this file does is when I make a Git repository, which we have not made yet, and I do git add, the first thing Git will do, or at some point, Git will read, it will look and see, is there a get ignore file in this directory? If there is, it will read what's in it, and it won't stash those files. It'll ignore them. Right? So I have this one that I've kind of built up that is just like common stuff I don't need to save and I don't want to push to GitHub that I'll just put in all my Python files. So I don't want to push my virtual environment. That's not necessary, and it's a huge file that I don't need to push. These .vs code files, which just save some local settings. These PyCache files, which we don't need, and so on and so forth. DS store, and then I've added this .secrets to it too. Cool. So now I'm going to make a Git repository, and then we'll do git add git commit -b, or no, sorry, git commit -m, and we'll just do initial commit. And we don't have to, but if you go through all these files and you read everything, you can see that secrets file did not show up, right? I hope so. We don't see it there? Good. Make sense? Cool. So now nothing in my secrets file works. So now I'm going to my secrets file. Actually, first let me go to views. Cut. Actually, nope. I'm going to copy this. Go to secrets. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to call it API. Cool. Save that. And actually, I don't think I need that now. Okay. I'm like 90% sure this is the right way to do this. Okay. Yeah. I could have called it whatever I wanted. But I called it secrets. Yes?
I know that new convention, we have to usually uppercase from what I found online, correct? On the API _key.
As far as I know, that's just the convention for a constant, is to uppercase everything, right? So now this isn't a Python file. I want that to be clear. It's just a file that I made, and basically this is going to get stored as a string. You can just think of it as a string, this whole thing, right? So then what I'm going to want to do is, I might have to look up exactly what the syntax for this is. That's like a hidden file, right? Yes. I don't think you have to do dot, but that's just what I've seen. So that's what I do. I wish I could speak more intelligently on that, but I can't right now. What do I want to do here? I'm going to cheat and look at something I already made where I did this. Projects, sites. So over here. And okay. So now, my views, this gets changed to environ key. And I need to import OS. Cool. So, okay. Yep. Let me watch it. I want to make sure it's broken. It should be broken now. If it's not, we're in trouble. Cool. So it exploded. And it said key error API key. And it's really exploding on line 6 here. Okay. So this is what I'm importing OS, which just gives me some, it's built into Python, and it gives me some ways to interact with the operating system, right, with the server. So what this does is you can set environment variables on like an instance of your server that's running, right? So when we run our server, and when we do this on like Heroku, we will tell Heroku, like, set this environmental variable, set this other variable, right? When we do it right here locally, we can actually set, so I have, sorry, I wasn't prepared for this one. I'm trying not to make it confusing. I have my terminal open right here, and I have like a bash session open, right? So we didn't talk a lot about bash scripts, but have you heard of bash scripts? Like you can write some code that runs in bash. You can also set variables that you have access to during this bash session, right? So we can make one, let's see if I can, I think we can say like name equals bash. And then if I do, I don't remember how to do this. Hold on. Access bash variables. Echo. I need to do echo $. There it is. And it gives me the value, right? Don't worry too much about this, right? This is just a thing I can do. So now this variable name, which I have to access with this $, don't worry about it. But like echo name is just basically print the variable name, right? And that variable will exist the entire time I have this session open, okay? So I can do the exact same thing with my API key. So I'm gonna go to my secrets file. I'm gonna take my API key and set that. So now it's set, I can clear, and then I can say echo, which again is just print for our purposes here, API underscore key, and there's the key. So the bash session is keeping track of that variable, right? Now this is like when we actually deploy on a server, we can do the same thing. When we deploy on the server will keep running it, will keep track of these environmental variables, and I can set them either the way I did it there, or some of them will have a GUI where you can just set the key value pairs. Then what I'm doing is in views, this OS and environ thing will read any environmental variables that I set in the bash session. So it's going to look for the one API key. Does that make sense? Yeah, Narayan, go ahead. I know that was really roundabout. I'm sorry, I wasn't really prepared for this. So now I'm starting to see the fault.
Is there any benefit in doing that versus just making secrets.py and importing secrets.py and just having that content?
Yeah, you could do that. You could do it that way too.
Yeah.
You could absolutely do it that way. I'm showing you this way because this is more similar to the way we will do it when we actually deploy stuff. You won't have a Python file. You'll have to do it with these environmental variables. So I'm just going to show you. I'm showing you this way. Cool.
So why is it useful?
Well, now it will work, or now it should work. I said that very confidently, and that was.
You gotta switch it out on your URL.
Let me change it to 8K.
Now it's exploding. Why is it
Not the
exploding?
actual URL.
What did I do wrong?
Can
Where?
you go on line 13 to see if you're, oh no, is it API cookies? Oh no, it's not.
API key. Why is this not doing what I want it to do? Do I have to run it with the, hold on. Okay, you might need to do. Let's try
Did
it.
it import secrets?
No, I think I need to do this.
Is that because
I think because I'm starting a session of the server.
it's not supposed to be instrument anymore?
No, it doesn't need to.
Is it okay if we're confused about this for a while?
Yep. Cool, there we go. So I had to pass it in as an environmental variable and run my command. And then when it spins the server up, it saves the variable in this session of the server. So I guess I had to do it that way.
Do the same thing with the client secret.
Yep. So like you would end up having a bunch of keys. And actually API key is a terrible name because you'll probably have a bunch of API keys. So it'd be better to say Ticketmaster API, Ticketmaster client, and you would have a bunch of these things. Yes.
So, is there a way to protect people from being able to see this when they just inspect? Will this be able to be seen when they inspect your page?
This one, no, I don't think so because it's going to read it from, so when any code they see is going to be from GitHub, right? No one will be able to see your code if they're just accessing your server. So it's just running the code, right? They won't be able to see it. So they'll only be able to see it on GitHub. And if they look on GitHub, all they're going to see is line 6 here. Cool. Yes.
So if you don't, I guess that's confusing too. You don't send that secret to GitHub. Where does it get the API key?
So that's what's nice about this is they can still pull your code down and mess with it, but they're gonna have to get their own API key and then set it
It
themselves.
won't just work.
No, it won't work right away, but it will work. All they have to do is get a key and set it here when they start my app, and then it will run, but it will run with their key instead of mine. So I've made no real changes to my code at all, and all someone has to do is make their own account and then run this. And that's common. You don't want someone running it with your API key that you don't know.
Is that something you usually put in like a or?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Like, so you'll see this a lot is like people will have a README about how to start my app, right? Because as they get more complicated and have more dependencies, you might have to do like, and we have that sometimes. It's like first install the requirements, then our app uses Ticketmaster. So you're going to need a key and you're going to need to set that as an environmental variable. Do it like this, etc. Yeah, and the README. Yes.
So our views are starting to become a little more robust.
Yeah.
As far as like what should be in your views.py. Say you had a function that was helping out list concerts, would you want that in like a utilities folder and then import that, or is it fine to have just static functions inside that are?
That's really up to you. That's really up to you. But you're right. Like we're doing like 3 different things here, and I would probably break these out into different functions. If this was all my app did, like this was my app done, and I'm not going to do it, I'd probably just put the functions in this file. Just who cares? But if I'm going to have tons of endpoints and stuff, yeah, I'd want to break them out. I would even at this point, you're starting to say like, maybe you make a class and then you create an instance of the class and you pass it all the information from the API. And then you can call methods on it that parse it or that return all the locations for you, stuff like that. And you would just put that in another file and import it.
Another quick question.
Yeah.
So if you were going to put these all on a map, then you would need the API key maps, right?
Yeah, and
And then
go ahead. No, finish your thought.
So you have to have different variables for each API key, like a Google API key.
So let me answer it two ways. It's like, if you had another API and you were dealing with on the back end like this, yes, you'd have more environmental variables. The weird thing about the Google Maps one is like, you kind of have to have it. It's going to be exposed on the front end. And that's just the way that the maps work. And the way they keep track of that is you also register it with a domain name. So that if someone steals your API key and they start making requests from a different domain, they'll block it, right? So that's one way that they can keep track of it. But that key is going to be exposed. It just has to be. So we wouldn't set it up the same way. But your larger point of more API keys, more environmental variables is true for the most part. Cool. Any other questions? This should still work as before. Let's just confirm that, and then back. What's another band that's touring right now? Madonna.
Not till 2020, guys. 2 ends.
2 ends. Like that? Well, yeah, she's touring. I mean, sign up. Buy your plane tickets. Cool.
I do want.
Yeah, please.
So when you're signing up for an API key, you said sometimes they ask you for a website name. Is that what you think?
Yeah.
And then if you don't have a website,
Yeah.
But I just made one obvious today, Ticketmaster.
Right.
That's maybe in trouble.
I don't think you can get in trouble for it. No, I'm not really sure how they keep track of this one. Yeah, well, because this one, yeah, you're right. This one didn't ask for a website, right? It didn't.
Didn't Ticketmaster mind it?
Did it? I don't remember when I signed up. It was optional.
It was an optional.
So they're just.
Yeah, there was one
No,
around.
you had to do the company name, company website.
And then there was the website you could use it on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was optional.
Yeah.
The URL was
What
optional.
did you do?
Company name. I mean, if I was doing a personal project and they demanded a company name, I would probably just put like Josh.com. I don't know. Who cares? I would just make one up. I would just make one up. Yeah. So sorry, that was a little off the rails. Are there any questions about making the API call or how we're making the API call? About how to incorporate APIs into your app?
How, what, roughly, what percentage of API calls?
Oh, I mean, I can't say for sure, but the ones that I have worked with have all been JSON. All of them. Go for it.
So if you were gonna make another function that is like just searching like what artists are near you or something, like the top 5
Yeah.
artists that are I don't know, whoever has the most passes, like just it's gonna return like list artists.
Right.
So then you would have like depth list artists. So at that point, since you're gonna need all that same URL stuff, would you have like a function that would just break up your URL differently and then like separate
Yeah.
kind of responsibility and then use that the same way?
I might do something like this. Is this kind of what you're talking about?
Yes. Okay. Just
And now I can use it in other functions, and then here I would just interpolate. Yeah. So I'm not typing that over and over and over again. Cool.
I just have a question too. This is probably a tangent. It's a question of it's a necessary answer. But it's gonna be hard because we don't actually have the URL here. But if you go to Google Maps and throw in the URL into your file, with just like standard Google Maps, like in theory, I could just use that without using an API, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can just throw in the latitude and longitude into the search bar, and then it'll spit it back out to me, and I don't need the API for front end, at least for Google Maps.
I don't know. I can't. Like, you mean just like any map?
Yeah,
You don't
no,
need
so
an
it'll,
API key?
it'll throw like the whatever. If you just type in Google Maps, it'll throw in the first place that it goes to,
Right.
and it has a search function to it, which is ultimately the same thing that you're doing with the API.
You mean on the Google Maps website?
Yeah, just like go to Google Maps.
But how would you run a search?
I mean,
And then you mean this right here?
That's what I'm asking. Like, is there a way for me to just like
Put
toggle that
this,
search bar and then throw in latitude and longitude?
How we do that?
Like,
Well,
Well,
There's no way, but how,
It's
there's,
empty.
I can do that, but there's no way for me to get this map on my website right now. Okay. Right. So yeah, you could redirect them here and then, I don't even know if you, yeah.
That is a whole lot easier though. Like,
Yeah, like if you just threw in the latitude and longitude.
Right
this
here?
URL. And
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
Yes, you could do that, so you provide a link. They click the link
Yeah.
and it would come here. But you can't take this whole thing and put it on your page, as far as I know, on your own page, as far as I know.
That's just something I was like about to toy around with yesterday.
You might be able to. I have no idea.
But I asked.
No, it's a good question. Anything else?
there's no east loop.
Well, that's because it's the lake.
Uh,